believe that it is really easy to fall into the trap of focusing so much on revenue and more cases and more work and where am I positioned among my peers. It's so easy to focus on those metrics that are really easy to measure that we don't take the time to focus on the metrics that I believe will make an even bigger impact. And that's what we've talked about today around how you lead your team, right? How you empower them, how you invest in them. That can have an exponential impact on your bottom line.
If you're an attorney in the pursuit of a successful law practice, fulfilling career, and the life of your dreams, this podcast has it all. Behind the Bench gives you great tools to overcome the unique challenges you face every day as a law firm owner. Welcome to Behind the Bench podcast with your host, Josh Konigsberg, author, partner, and co-founder of Law Firm Marketing Pros and lifelong entrepreneur.
Welcome to another captivating episode of Behind the Bench podcast. This is your host, Josh Konigsberg, and as many of you know, I'm a digital marketing expert specializing in helping lawyers generate more qualified leads online and thus enhance their law firm revenues. Join us as we explore the fascinating realm of law, featuring insightful discussions, seasoned lawyers, legal experts, and industry leaders. Special thank you to our sponsor, Law Firm Marketing Pros. They get you more leads, more clients, and more profits. Josh Konigsberg here with Behind the Bench podcast, brought to you by the Law Firm Marketing Pros. Super excited today about our guest, Dr. William Attaway. Quick background, he's a leading executive coach for high-performing agency owners and entrepreneurs, leading the way to unprecedented success. With nearly 3 decades of experience, Dr. Attaway's transformative executive coaching empowers leaders to achieve remarkable success in their agencies and beyond. He works closely with clients to develop tailored strategies that address specific needs and goals, ensuring that they are equipped to lead with confidence and achieve sustainable growth. He has published 2 books, one, Leadership Lessons from the Not So Minor Prophets, and his most recent book, Catalytic Leadership, 12 Keys to Becoming an Intentional Leader Who Makes a Difference. Dr. Attaway, so nice to see you today. Thanks for coming.
Josh, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's really an honor to be here.
So let's jump in. Tremendous introduction. Just so impressed with what you've been able to achieve. So impressed with your library. so if I've read a third of that, I'd probably be a lot smarter than what I am today. So your journey from academia to leadership coaching has been extraordinary. Mm-hmm. Can you share your background and the experiences that led you to focus on helping leaders grow and succeed?
That's a great question, Josh. It really goes back to when I was 15 years old, if you can believe it. I was invited to attend my first leadership conference by a high school teacher who saw something in me that I did not see in myself. I hopped a plane, got to that conference, and was absolutely captivated by what I learned. The power of leadership to impact a team, an organization, a business, a firm for good or for bad. You know, a leadership is influence. It's nothing more, nothing less. John Maxwell's right. And if we use that leadership gift in a way that is for the benefit of other people, the sky's the limit. But so often I watch leaders become the lid. And so my career started in corporate. I moved from that into the nonprofit sector, working through the local church. But for almost 30 years, I have been coaching leaders in a variety of different contexts, from C-suite leaders to solopreneurs, from attorneys to people in government, contractors, and everything in between, trying to help them understand how to get out of their own way and helping them to see what they can't see, because you can't see the whole picture when you're in the frame. And that's what I do. I come alongside and help them see those things so they can fix them, so they can move forward into the future they know is possible.
So starting at 15, so you were a leader as well as being in academia, obviously with a PhD.
Sure.
So can you talk about how that kind of transpired from, you're obviously at 15 years old, you go to this conference, you love this, but then you go on to get a PhD.
Absolutely. My academic training, that was the path that I loved. I love to learn, as evidenced by the books. I'm constantly taking in information. If you look at my StrengthsFinder assessment, my number one is input. My number two is learner. And that's how you would characterize me. That's what fires me up. Not just learning and taking in, but then processing it in such a way that I can make it available to other people. I laughingly tell my clients, I read all these books so you don't have to. I want to synthesize that information and make it available and accessible to you in a way that's going to help you with your firm, with your business, so that it's going to help you become a better leader, right? So what academia taught me, in both in my studies and then in teaching and in college and university settings for nearly 15 years. What that taught me was how to take the complex and make it accessible, make it simpler so that people can grab onto it. Complexity is incredibly intimidating for most people. And when it comes to leadership and mindset, these are very large topics. And so many business owners and entrepreneurs come into this and they're like, yeah, that's too big. I can't wrap my head around that. Or they'll take a little bite and say, okay, I'll master this one little piece. I want to make the complex simple. I want to make it accessible so that you can then take it and apply it. Information transforms no one. Information applied, that leads to transformation.
Oh, well said. So good. And thank you for that. So it's like an aggregation and consolidation of information that you can regurgitate. So that's just so well put. Thank you so much for doing that. I mean, really. So, and I've seen you speak and, we met at a couple conferences and just tremendous. So let's talk about the book a little bit, Catalytic Leadership. So you talk about how leaders are, I think the term you use is ignite transformation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So for attorneys growing law firms aggressively, like so many of my clients, what are the key traits a catalytic leader can use to inspire their teams to scale the practice?
I think the first one that I would put, and this is what I call the non-negotiable of catalytic leadership, it's to pursue and maintain a teachable spirit. What I mean by that is you are constantly in learning mode. You're listening more than you speak. And I know for a lot of leaders, that's a challenge because we have a lot of things we want to say. I'm not immune to that. But I find that I don't learn as much when I'm talking as I do when I'm listening. And that's really true for all of us. Choosing to be teachable is just that. It's a choice. This is a choice that I make every day, Josh. Every morning, I wake up and I make a decision. Before I'm ever in my first meeting, my first session, I make a decision. I want to be the most teachable person in every environment I'm in that day. I want to listen more than I speak.
Amazing. Amazing. So for me, something that really resonated in the book, and I've got some bookmarks here. So it specifically for me, that really resonated, chapter 3, which is titled Actively Pursue Intentional Growth. And I'm going to go and recite just one paragraph here. So, and this for me, I've been saying this forever, it seems. You never stop being a student, right?
Yeah.
So, and here's what you said. I believe every leader needs an intentional growth plan that is designed around their wiring that helps them develop their strengths and leverage their contributions to the team and organization they lead. Mm-hmm. So just talk a little bit deeper about that, because again, it just resonated so much with me.
Yeah. So your listeners went to school for a long time, like I did, right? Like they went not just to college, but to graduate school, right? And you get your JD. I mean, this is you intentionally designed a career path based on what you learned. But is that where the education stops? No, because they have to do continual development, right? They have to, that's part of life. It's part of their journey.
Yeah. Yep.
That is a small fraction of the potential that you have to continue to learn and grow. I never want to stop that. And I put together an intentional plan every December for the following year. What are 2 areas that I need to grow in? What are 2 things that I need to learn more about? What are two areas that I want to really see the ball move up the field this year? I'm going to be intentional about that. And I'm going to pre-decide what those two things are. And then I'm going to execute. I'm going to have a plan that I execute starting in January and running all the way through December.
Love it.
That intentionality of a growth plan is one that your listeners can take and apply. Not just checking the boxes to make sure they get their continual development credits, right? But to say, hey, as a leader, as a business owner, as somebody who influences other people and leads a team, where do I need to grow? Put together a plan.
Yeah, so well said. So oftentimes I'll see that law firm owners are a little resistant to change and definitely slow to adopt, right? So whether it's adopting new technology or rethinking client acquisition strategies, how can a catalytic leader effectively overcome this resistance and drive motivation?
I think it's important to understand that growth only happens on the other side of change. Most of us resist change that's not our idea. We don't mind change that's our idea. If we decide we want a new sofa, we'll go get it because that was our idea, and then we like that change. If we decide to go get a new cell phone or a new laptop or to implement a new policy in the personnel manual, that's our choice. We decided that. We don't mind that. But if somebody else forces change on us, well, that's when we resist. But what we have to understand as catalytic leaders who really want to make a difference in your firm, you have to understand that growth only happens on the other side of change. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Our friends at AA have a word for that, right? Insanity, right? You have to understand that in order to grow, you have to change. It's non-negotiable. Now, most of us are only going to change when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same.
That's right.
We got to be mindful of
that.
That's where evaluation comes in, Josh. And that's where we have to really be honest with ourselves. Every week I do a weekly review. And I sit down as an appointment with myself. In my case, it's on Sunday evenings. And I look back over the previous week and I ask myself 3 questions. What were the biggest wins this week? And I celebrate those wins because most of us skip right past that. You get more of what you focus on. I'm going to focus on wins first because I want more of those. I'm going to celebrate those. I'm going to write them down. Second thing, where did I swing and miss this week? Right? Where were my fails this week? I'm going to write those down too. Third, the next time I'm in a similar situation, what would I do different next time? And I process through that learning during the weekly review. Then I look forward and I say, I know looking at the appointments I've got, about 85% of my week is pre-decided. I know what the appointments are going to be. Okay. In those appointments, what do I need to prepare in advance to bring the best version of myself into those meetings? What do I need to think through, to process so that I can bring that best version? I pre-decide that during the weekly review meeting. What that time does for me, it's 60, 90 minutes. What that time does for me is it gives me the opportunity to process my learning so that they're available to me going forward and to prepare and block time to make sure that I'm coming into the environments I'm going into the best I possibly can. Your listeners can do the same thing. You think back over the previous week and you say, hey, where did I win this week? Celebrate those things. Capture them. It's really easy to run right past that. But when you evaluate, what this does is it gives you the ability and the capacity to maintain that teachable spirit and to move forward, not afraid of change, but instead seeing the growth on the other side of it.
Amazing. That's gold. I mean, that's such a good nugget for anybody listening. Just that one piece is worth the price of admission, as I like to say. So, and that kind of leads right into the next question. And maybe this actually already answers the next question without me even asking it. And that is, so, many attorneys struggle to balance their working in their business, right? That is handling the case management, right? Versus working on their business. And that would be developing strategies. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to leaders about balancing the big picture versus the day-to-day?
I think that's a struggle for all of us. I struggle with that in my practice, right? The reality is nothing changes until you change it. You get to choose. And so what I do during that weekly review is I'm actually going to time block sections of time in my week, sometimes an hour, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 if I can squeeze it in. I'm going to prioritize time to work on my business, on my practice. That's the only way that's going to happen. If you think, oh, I'll have some time this week, I'll fit that in, you're going to get to Friday at 5 o'clock or whenever you end your week, and you're going to say, oh man, I didn't get that in this week, maybe next week. And guess what? Next week will be a repeat. You've got to pre-decide. You've got to choose. This is important enough to prioritize. You prioritize what matters most to you. We all do. I'm going to challenge you to prioritize the strategic thinking that your firm deserves.
And so simply said, today, I often hear this quote, what you're not changing, you're choosing.
That's exactly right.
So I think this is probably the most important question for me and my listeners. And that is, so oftentimes there's multiple partners in a law firm, right? So with the big egos that sometimes we run into, there can often be conflict, right?
Yes.
So how can attorneys apply the principles of catalytic leadership to avoid conflict and resolve the issues to continue to grow in a healthy environment?
That's a fantastic question. I would frame it this way. And I realize that, in the world of attorneys, the whole idea of being a fierce advocate, right? A passionate advocate is baked in, right? And so there's an adversarial mindset that's just part and parcel in this world. I'm going to invite you, when it comes to relationships with partners, to think about this a little bit differently. I'm going to invite you to use this frame. Instead of me versus you, I want you to think about it as me and you versus the problem. And what this does, that simple framing, if you begin to think about it that way, you're now on the same team as your partner, right? You now have the opportunity to say, hey, you know what? It's not me against you. It's us against this problem. Can you help me solve this? Hey, we've got this issue. And and it's your fault, we've got this issue. I need your help. Can you help me solve this? I believe together we can get to the solution side of this. I believe together we can resolve it. Yeah. Can I get your help?
That's amazing.
Man, that one frame can absolutely change how you think about conflict.
So good. Such great advice. So I can use that.
Right? I hope so. I talk about this all the time because I think so often the conflict that we have in our lives is avoidable. It has to do with the mindset that we are bringing into that relationship or into that conversation, right? If you walk in with a teachable spirit, you're going to walk in open-handed. That's right. You're going to walk in saying, what can I learn here? Maybe I don't know everything. Maybe there's information I don't have yet. And that's where me and you versus the problem, you walk in with that posture, that's a game changer.
Love it. So with all the years of coaching experience that you have, what are the most common barriers that leaders face when scaling their organizations or law firms, right? And how can an aggressive, growth-minded attorney overcome these challenges?
One of the biggest problems that I see in working with clients is when you start something, you have to do everything at the beginning. You have to touch everything. Everything comes across your desk. Every decision comes to you. And you're at what I call, you're at the center of the spider web. Every strand is connected to you. As you grow, you have to hire other people to help you. You hire other attorneys, you hire paralegals, you hire support staff. And those people are looking to you to lead now. Leadership's a different skill than just getting things done. When you were an individual contributor, a solo practitioner, you had to do it all. But when you're leading a team, that's a different skill set. Understanding that and understanding that you now have to develop the skill of leadership separately from the skill of practicing law. It's just a different skill. You now have the opportunity to learn 2 skills, not just one. And when you do that, you step into those relationships understanding my job here is not to get things done as the leader. My job is to get things done through other people. That's a shift. Yeah, and right. I see a lot of leaders who don't make it because they can't get past wanting to touch everything. Right. And make all the decisions.
Right. Control. Right. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. If you can make that turn and you can understand, hey, the best thing for the firm is for every decision not to come to me. The best thing for the firm is for me to not be at the center of the spider web. If you can make that turn, in William's opinion, you are in the top 10%, because most people don't. And they become the lid or the cap on their firm's growth. It will not grow beyond your level of leadership. If you can make this turn, you're immediately in the top 10%.
So if you want to be in the top 10% of all law firms for your category of law, and that would I would consider an aggressive growth-minded attorney, these are the principles really that you need to apply.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay. So
growing your leadership is something you will never regret.
And that is something that you can put in your learning plan for 2025. Right?
Exactly right.
Okay. So, and leadership growth, and I think I don't think it matters whether it's leadership or anything else that you're trying to master, comes with challenges and setbacks, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So, team dynamics, financial pressure, whatever it is, what strategies in the book can leaders really use to maintain and motivate resilience during the setbacks?
One of the principles that I talk about in the book is to never stop leading change. And that's difficult for some, because this idea of always being ready to adapt and to pivot is uncomfortable. You never settle into a maintenance mindset. You're always reading the room. You're always reading the circumstances and the situations in the market, and you have to adapt and adjust to them. That's a big piece of this, Josh, to be so focused on that mindset that you never stop. But honestly, I think the last principle in the book is the most difficult. And if I could challenge your listeners with one, it would be this one. It's that leading yourself is the most difficult thing you'll ever do. You are the hardest person you will ever lead. And the reason for that is because our capacity for self-deception and rationalization is pretty much limitless, in my opinion. Yep. We can rationalize and say, oh, well, that's because of that. Oh, well, that's because of that. Okay. That type of behavior doesn't get you where you want to go. Learning to lead yourself well is a skill that every person listening can do and would be well advised to do.
So I would often say to my children that as human beings, we can justify just about any behavior, right?
It's so true.
So that does not make it right. Just
right.
You can justify it. And that's
right. Is that helpful to do? I mean, this is the question I'm always asking. Is that helpful when you do that? Right. Does that get you where you want to go?
Right. So developing future leaders within a firm is also critical for growth. What strategies do you recommend for law firm owners for mentoring and empowering emerging leaders within their firm, whether that be a lead paralegal or someone who's going to be a lead paralegal or an associate to become a partner?
I think the first thing I would say is that it's not just going to happen. You have to acknowledge that you're not going to wake up one day and realize, oh, wow, I've mentored all these people. I didn't mean for that to happen, but here it is. And they've grown and become who they wanted to be. It doesn't happen accidentally. You have to be intentional. And that means you have to have a plan. You have to evaluate where you are in this. And then you have to evaluate where you want to be. Do you want to be at a place where you are empowering other people, where you're empowering people to take the next step in their development and seeing that paralegal move to a different height, seeing that associate become a partner? Great. Then what does it take to get there? It takes time. You have to invest time in those people, right? You have to have a plan. There needs to be a trajectory, a growth plan for them as well. And you can help them to develop that. But it starts with conversations. I do one-on-ones with every one of my direct reports every week, not because I'm bored and have nothing else to do, because I want to listen and I want to hear where they want to go. Because my job as a leader is to help them get from where they are to where they want to be inside of our team. The same thing is true for your attorneys listening. In your firms, you have the opportunity to invest in and empower young and emerging leaders to take the next step toward where they want to be inside of your ecosystem. You simply have to choose to prioritize it. And again, it goes back to time blocking. to pre-decide where I'm going to spend time this week. Could you spend a lunch hour and gather 2 or 3 or 4 of those young leaders together and say, hey, we're going to meet once a month over lunch, and we're going to discuss some great books about leadership. We're going to discuss some great books about personal development. We're going to discuss some great books about the latest advances in law in our field. Whatever it is, I'm going to pour time into you and have discussions with you. It takes a lunch a month. Is that worth your time? I've always seen it to be well worth the investment.
It has to be a tremendous return on the investment of time. That's what I'll call a great time trade, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Is there any references or resources in the book specific to what you're discussing?
One of the tools that I use with clients and that I have begun to use with teams is teaching them about an assessment called the Working Genius Assessment. I've been using this for close to 5 years now, since it was first in beta. And this is an assessment that helps leaders to understand the wiring of the team that they lead, where they bring the most value into the team setting. It's not a personality assessment as much as it is, where are their areas of genius? Where's their zone of genius in the landscape of work? When you understand that, when you walk through that assessment with your team and you understand how everyone is wired, then you're inviting the right people into the right conversations, and you hear their dreams and you see their goals. Then and only then can you help them achieve them.
It's so good. I saw you speak on this, and it is a tremendous tool. So you discuss this in the book, and we'll talk a little bit more about how our listeners can learn more about this from you. I got one more question before we jump into our lightning round, which is my favorite part. So are there any additional nuggets of wisdom or insight that you can share with aggressive, growth-minded attorneys who are looking to take their law firm to the next level?
I believe that it is really easy to fall into the trap of focusing so much on revenue and more cases and more work and where am I positioned among my peers. It's so easy to focus on those metrics that are really easy to measure that we don't take the time to focus on the metrics that I believe will make an even bigger impact. And that's what we've talked about today around how you lead your team, right? How you empower them, how you invest in them. That can have an exponential impact on your bottom line. It can have an exponential impact on how you serve clients, on the revenue that you see your firm produce, because it's far beyond what you can do. You've now multiplied yourself.
Sure.
When you make that investment, it's so easy to look at this and say, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I got to focus on chasing the next case. I get that. But if you will take the time, if you will make this a priority, you will see fruit over time.
Good stuff. So good. So I want to move into or pivot to the lightning round, which is where people get to know, like, and trust you. So I'm just going to fire off 10 questions one at a time, and just whatever answer pops into your head, you can answer. And it's just a lot of fun, casual. Okay.
I love it.
So what never fails to make you laugh?
Seinfeld.
Best. Well, there you go. There it is. Love it. Best comedy ever, in my opinion. So,
big fan.
Best compliment you ever got?
Oh my goodness. You make me think. You create an environment where it's safe to think and process.
I like that. A person who you would trade places with for a day?
John Maxwell. Been a mentor to me for a long time.
Amazing.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. What is your guilty pleasure?
Probably strawberry ice cream.
Okay. What's the biggest risk you ever took?
Asking my wife to marry me.
Okay. How long has it been?
We will celebrate 27 years in a few weeks.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Worst piece of advice you ever got?
You can do anything you want to do.
Mm-hmm. What do you wish you were better at dealing with?
The internal emotions and feelings of other people.
What is one thing that you would like to change about yourself?
It'd be great to have more hair.
You hop a flight to Turkey. I hear that's where it's happening. I think I know the answer to this next question, but I'll ask, what are you most passionate about?
I'm most passionate about seeing leaders thrive, seeing them achieve their capacity and their potential.
Yeah, wonderful. So tell us something that most people don't know about you.
I've spent several seasons on the staff of archaeological digs in the Middle East, working in Jordan.
Wow, amazing. Great. Well, good stuff. Dr. Attaway, please tell our listeners the best way to reach you. Before you do that, I want to highly recommend Catalytic Leadership. You can get it online and Amazon. Mm-hmm. And what's the best way for our listeners to reach you?
So you can go to catalyticleadership.net. That's the home base for everything that we do, from the podcast that I host that you were gracious enough to be a guest on, Josh. Fantastic conversation there. Check out that episode. The podcast that we host, the online membership community that I do, the coaching that I provide for leaders, for entrepreneurs and business leaders who want to go to a next level.
Thanks again, Dr. Attaway, for joining us today on the Behind the Bench podcast, brought to you by law firm Marketing Pros. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to another fabulous episode of Behind the Bench. I hope you take action on some insight and tips you learned today. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, and share.